Welcome to Disciple Dojo. As we're coming up on the end of the year, one of the things that I'm trying to do before year end is learn a new skill. And in this case, it is learning how to read Paleo Hebrew. Now, you may not even know what Paleo Hebrew is. And if you do, you may wonder, why do you want to read it? And there's no super esoteric reason. It's just that it would be cool if I'm looking at an inscription or a picture of an ancient Hebrew like bulla seal or, something from the ancient world that's written in the script that Hebrew originally was written in before the square Aramaic script that we're all familiar with. It would just be cool to be able to read it for myself, or at least to be able to decipher the characters in it and not have to go straight to a translation of it. And so one of the resources I picked up from our friends at Lexham Publishers is Learning Biblical Hebrew by Carl Kutz and Rebecca Josberger. I'm working my way through this grammar. I think from time to time it's really helpful. I haven't been in a Hebrew classroom in over 20 years. And so one of the ways that I try to keep my language sharp, or at least better understand the bit of Hebrew that I do know, is to go back through different Hebrew grammars. The one I learned with was Pratico and Van Pelt. Gary Pratico was my Hebrew teacher. That's the one right above Thor here behind me on the shelf. And then over the years, I've looked at others like So's, Muraoka's, which good luck if that was the grammar you learned from. That thing's indecipherable. And also Dwayne Garrett's. So it's helpful to look at how other people teach languages other than the way that I learned it. And it gives me a fuller understanding. It's just like in jiu-jitsu, like when I go to train, let's say I go up to Henzo's or I go visit a friend's academy down in Georgia. Like, I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for, like 15 years now. But when I go, I don't necessarily look for new moves. What I go and look at is, how do they teach the basics? How do they execute the basics? What little details might I be missing? Things that I never noticed before. That's really where the payoff comes the further I get in jiu-jitsu. And so when it comes to Hebrew, I'm probably a purple belt at best in Hebrew, if you know jiu-jitsu terminology. Not a black belt in Hebrew by any means. And so it's helpful for me to look at how other teachers and other traditions communicate the basics of the language. That just helps shore up my shortcomings. So that's part of why I wanted to learn Paleo Hebrew. And on the first page of Kurtz and Josberger's grammar, there is a section about Paleo Hebrew. I'll show it to you in just a second, as well as a supplemental section on how to write Hebrew, both in the familiar square script and how to write Hebrew in cursive. Did you know that there's cursive Hebrew? If you've ever seen graffiti in Israel, you might. Well, Paleo Hebrew and cursive Hebrew are two that I can't read. So as we close out this year and as we look to the next year to begin, once again, Judaism January here at Disciple Dojo, I thought, what better time to learn a skill that I've never learned than to be able to read and write Paleo Hebrew, and then after that, cursive modern Hebrew. And I thought, why not use this opportunity here at Disciple Dojo to teach those of you who watch this channel, who enjoy us walking through the Psalms. You think it's cool that we get into the Hebrew, but you don't know how to read Hebrew. I thought, well, why not share some of that knowledge? There are a ton of resources, excellent resources online for free where you can learn the Hebrew alphabet, how to read it, how to write it. There may be, like right in the corner here on YouTube, as you're watching this, there might be a bunch of those recommendations. I don't know. But I thought, why not put something together here at the dojo that's very simple, that's very quick, and that you can bookmark if you would like to learn how to read and write in Hebrew, whether it's the square script, whether it's Paleo Hebrew, or whether it's cursive. And so in this video, I'm going to show you how to write the letters of the Hebrew alphabet in all three versions. So if you appreciate this as a resource and you want to help us continue to put more resources out, one of the best ways you can do that is by subscribing to this channel if you haven't already, and telling other people about it, sharing our videos, liking, commenting, all that kind of interactive stuff. YouTube really rewards that for creators because that's what they want to see happen. So that not only helps us put out more content, but it helps you guys because you get more free content. And also, speaking of helping us, real quick, if you notice, I'm wearing one of our Disciple Dojo hats. These patches that I had made are available both in this dark version as well as the lighter version that we have. They're available to all of our monthly dojo donors, whatever amount, whatever you're able to afford. If you are a Disciple Dojo donor or you become a Disciple Dojo donor, and you can do that at the link right here on your screen, Any dollar amount, I don't see it. That's all handled by our finance director. But all you have to do is once you become a donor, just use the contact page on our website and select ministry from the drop down menu on that contact page, which those emails come to me, and just say, hey, I'm a Dojo donor. I would love to get a patch. Tell me if you want either a lighter one or a darker one, and I would be happy to send one your way. All right, so let's learn how to write the basic Hebrew alphabet. Now, I mentioned Cutts and Josberger's grammar. Here it is. And after their table of contents and after the preface, the first chapter is on the Hebrew alphabet. And so here they have Paleo Hebrew compared with the standard Aramaic square script. And then a few pages over, they have how to write Hebrew in the standard square script and then how to write it in cursive. However, there are numerous scripts for Hebrew. Hebrew developed, like all languages, with different scripts over different time periods. So like, for instance, if you try to look at a manuscript from medieval English, there would be some of the letters that would be hard for you to recognize. And going back even further to Old English, it would be even harder because letters, alphabets change over time, and Hebrew is no exception. There are different Paleo Hebrew scripts, some for coins, some for inscriptions. There's early, middle, and late Paleo Hebrew. If you're interested in that, you can find it online. Gesenius's grammar has the different stages and all of the different letters. So I'm just using the script that Cutts and Josberger have in their grammar. But I'll show you so you can get a better idea of the difference. This is the Torah in Paleo Hebrew. Now, this is not an actual thing. This is reconstructed. They've basically taken the Leningrad Codex and reproduced it in Paleo Hebrew. So this is what it might have looked like. But you can see Paleo Hebrew script. It's very flowy, almost cursive. It's lines rather than like wedges. There are no serifs. So this is what Paleo Hebrew may have looked like. And you can compare that. Here's my old Biblia Sacra, which is in desperate need of a rebind. So if you know any Bible binders out there, if you want to do a collab project with Disciple Dojo and rebind this in exchange for a video talking about your rebinding and what all is involved, send me a message. I'd love to chat with you. But here you can get a good idea of the difference between Paleo Hebrew and square script Aramaic Hebrew. So just two entirely different writing styles. Very few of the letters actually have anything in common. But if you're wondering, like, what would, if Moses were writing down parts of what became the Torah, what would it have looked like? Well, it would have looked more like this than like this. This was many centuries later when Hebrew adopted the more international Aramaic script. And then, of course, all these points and dots and marks, those came much, much later, like around 1000 AD. Those were the Masoretic vowel pointing system, which we're not even going to look at in this video. But that should at least give you an idea of what the different scripts are. And now let's show you how to write them. And we're going to go old school for this. We're going to use an actual dry erase board. I could try to do this digitally and maybe get like a Wacom pad or something kind of stylus and do it on screen. This much easier, and this is what we're going with. Now, I will say my Hebrew handwriting is not the best. And again, this is just how I've written Hebrew for the past 20 years. I think it's illegible, but you may learn it differently if you learn it from actual native Hebrew speakers. So just keep that in mind before you light me up in the comments. But the first Hebrew letter is Aleph. And the way I write Aleph is like that. Some people write Aleph like that. And in Paleo Hebrew, Aleph is written like that. And in cursive, it's written like that. So any of these, and sometimes like the fancier the type, it'll have these little serifs on it. But all of these are the same letter. This is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph. And Aleph doesn't make a sound. The sound that Aleph makes is nothing. Aleph is a pause. It's a guttural. You pause, you don't pronounce it. It's like you close up your throat at the back. And then the sound it makes is whatever vowel is put with it. So if a word begins with an Aleph and the vowel with that is an O vowel, then you'll pronounce the Aleph as O. If it's an A vowel, you'll pronounce the Aleph as A. If it's an I vowel, you'll pronounce the Aleph as I. So it's right off the bat, it shows you how different Hebrew is from most modern Romance languages. It's the silent letter. The next letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph. What do you think the next letter is? Yep, it's bet. Aleph, bet. And bet is like that. Well, this should be joined, sorry. In Paleo Hebrew, bet looks like that. And in cursive, it looks like that. Bet makes the B sound, buh, buh. And if it's a hard bet, it's buh. And in older Hebrew, I don't think this holds true in modern Hebrew. I don't speak or know modern Hebrew, so anything I say is biblical Hebrew only. But in biblical Hebrew, there was a hard B, buh, and then there was a soft B, which is v, like the V, the letter V. And you can see this in some Hebrew words, like the word for good. I'll just write in English, the word for good in Hebrew is tob, but it's actually pronounced tov. If you don't know Hebrew, you at least have heard this before when somebody shouts mazel tov. That's the tov is the tav part of that. So the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, bet. The third letter of the Hebrew alphabet is gimel. Gimel is the G sound, g, g. And in Paleo Hebrew, it looks like that. And in cursive Hebrew, it looks like that. And just this G, like with bait, can also have a hard and a soft sound. We don't really hear it that well in English. So the hard gimel would be g, like go get me that thing. The soft gimel would be r, like a GH, like you kind of make that guttural sound. I don't think that holds true in modern Hebrew once again. But the third letter of the Hebrew alphabet, gimel. The fourth letter, dalet. Dalet. This is the D sound, dalet. In Paleo Hebrew, it's kind of a skinny triangle. Actually, it doesn't have a foot like that, just sort of a straight triangle there. And in cursive, it's a fun one. It has a little curly Q. So dalet. Now dalet, like bait and gimel, has hard and soft variations in biblical Hebrew. So a hard dalet would be the D sound, duh. And the soft dalet would be it's written, I think phonetically, some people will do DH, but it's the. It's like how in English we have TH, there's a soft TH like thief, and then there's a hard TH like that. And so the dalet in Hebrew, if it's a soft dalet in biblical Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, would be the. Again, I don't think that distinction holds in modern Hebrew. I think they're all just duh. So aleph, beit, gimel, dalet, and then the fifth letter is hey. This is the H sound. In Paleo Hebrew, it's kind of fun. It looks like that. And in Hebrew cursive, this is one of the few Hebrew cursives that looks like the normal letter. It looks like that. So this is the H sound. Hello, how are you? Ha, hey, H sound. So the first five, aleph, beit, gimel, dalet, hey. This next letter has two ways you can say it. Most modern Hebrew speakers say vav, and ancient Hebrew, it was pronounced wow. So it's either a V sound or a W sound. In modern Hebrew, it's a V sound, v, just like the soft bait. In ancient Hebrew, some grammarians argue that it was pronounced like a W sound. If you learned Hebrew from Doug Stewart or Dwayne Garrett, for instance, you learned it as a W sound. If you learned from Gary Pratico, Miles Van Pelt, you learned it as a V sound. But it's very simple. Vav, vav. In Paleo, looks like that. And in cursive Hebrew, just a straight line. Vav. And it's either a V sound or in ancient Hebrew, a W sound. Vav. Next letter looks really similar, and it is Zion. It's like a Vav with a little hat on it. Now, in Paleo Hebrew, it looks very different. It's like a turned on its side H, or kind of like a backwards Z maybe. And in cursive Hebrew, it's very confusing because it's like an opposite gimel. So gimel was this. Zion is that in cursive Hebrew. Very confusing. I would love to know why, when modern cursive Hebrew was being invented, like you had the chance to make it less confusing. Why make it more confusing? Let me know if you're a native Hebrew speaker. But anyway, this is Zion, and this makes the Z sound. Z. The next letter is chet. And chet looks a lot like hey, but hey has this empty space here. Chet, it's joined together. So these two get confused a lot, and they sound similar. Hey makes the H sound, chet makes the sound. In Paleo, het looks like this. Sometimes there's a third thing there, depending on which stage of Paleo Hebrew, to my knowledge. But like the cursive hey, het in cursive is very simple. It looks very similar to its Aramaic square script. So this is het. This is the letter in Hanukkah, for instance. That's why sometimes you'll see Hanukkah spelled with a CH. It's not Chanukah, it's Hanukkah. They're basically trying to show you in English one letter that we don't have an equivalent for in English, so they use like CH, but then that just makes people mispronounce it even more. So the next letter is tet. Tet. Now, sometimes this is handwritten. I want to say people do something like that. In Paleo, it's just a circle with a cross in it. And in cursive, it's just a circle like that. In the Aramaic, the square script, it has a square bottom there, so you'll see it look like that sometimes. But this is tet. This is one of the 2 Hebrew letters for T. This always makes the T sound, that hard T sound, tet. And then the 10th letter, yod, the smallest Hebrew letter, yod. In Paleo Hebrew, it's kind of fun. It looks like that. And in cursive, it's just a little apostrophe. So yod, this makes the Y sound, yod. So now we're up to 10 letters. Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet, Yod. Next letter in Hebrew is Kaf. Very easy to remember. It looks like a backwards C. Kaf. Now, when Kaf is at the end of a word, it has what's called a final form. So you'll never see this letter on the end of a word. Some Hebrew letters, only a couple of them, they are written differently when they're stuck on the end of the word. When it's put on the end of the word, it looks like that. It looks like a dalet, but it drops below the line. So like if this is the line that we're writing on, it drops below the line. This is a final kaf. Now, Paleo, I don't think it has a final form. It just looks like that. And in cursive is very similar. It's either just a circle like this, or if it's a final kaf in cursive, then it looks like a kind of a question mark. But again, this drops below the line here. So this is kaf, and it has a hard and a soft sound. It's either a k, like a hard K sound, k, or if it's a soft kaf, then it makes the same sound pretty much as het. And so it's ch, K-H. So kaf, K or Ch. Next letter is Lamed. Lamed actually comes above the line. So like if this is the top of the letter, it extends above the normal writing line. In Paleo Hebrew, looks like that. And in cursive Hebrew, it's like this curlicue, squiggly. And this is the L sound, la, Lamed. Next letter is Mem. And mem is like a triangle with a little point on it, or some people do it like that. The key is this little point on the side of a shark fin looking thing. Mem also has a final form. When mem is at the end of a word, it's not going to look like this. It's going to look like a box with a little bit of an overhang at the front. That's not a very good box. This should be more square. In Paleo, it looks like this. And in cursive, it also has 2 forms. It looks like a backwards N, or if it's the final mem, it looks like kind of a backwards P. And this little line here goes below the line it's being written on. So this is mem, the M letter. Anywhere in the word, it'll look like this. At the end of the word, it'll look like that. After M comes N, just like in English. And so we have the letter Nun. In Paleo, it's very similar. It just looks like that. Nun also has a final form, by the way, same as the top, but then it goes below the line. So both of these are Nun. In cursive Hebrew, Nun kind of looks like a J, unless it's a final Nun, and then it looks very similar to a typed final Nun. So this is the N letter, Nun. Then we come to Samek. Samek. This is one of the 2 Hebrew letters that makes the S sound, Samek. In Paleo, it looks like that. Just 3 lines and then 1 down. And in cursive, just like that. Samik, the S sound. So, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik. Next we come to Ayin. Ayin is very hard to pronounce. In fact, some grammars, like when Pratico taught us, he said just don't even worry about pronouncing it because it's pronounced at the very back of your throat. Lion, lion. Like you have to close your throat but make a sound through that closed throat. It's a very weird sound. But you get a hint of this because it's almost, think of it like almost like a G, G, but swallowed further in the back of the throat. So, and you hear this in the name of Gaza. Gaza is Gaza in the Middle East, but it's not pronounced. It's not, Gaza is not spelled with a gimel. It's Gaza, Gaza. So that's an ayin, but most of the time it's silent, especially if it ends a word. It's just a closing of the breathing, a glottal stop, I think it's called. Just like, just you're swallowing it. So ayin, ayin. And ayin is kind of like, looks like a Y in English, but more flat. Ayin. If it's in square script, sometimes you'll see it with little serifs on the top. Ayin. In Paleo, it's just a little circle. And in cursive, it's a little like a downward pointing fish. Ayin. This, like Aleph, is the one that's not pronounced. Ayin takes whatever vowel comes after it. Next letter is Pe. And Pe also has a final form. So Pe looks like that, unless it's at the end of the word, and then it looks like that. Pe. In Paleo, it looks like that. And in cursive, it has 2 forms as well. Like that. Or, and this one's kind of funky, like that. I haven't been writing Hebrew cursive long enough to be able to do that one off the top of my head. And this is going to look a lot like another cursive Hebrew letter too. So again, I don't understand who invented cursive in modern Hebrew and why did you make it so complicated. But this is Pe. Pe, if it's one of those, they're called the Bagad Kafat letters. It's one of them that has either a soft or a hard pronunciation. So if it's a hard Pe, it's a P sound, like pop. And if it's a soft Pe, it's a F sound, like PH. And I believe that does hold in modern Hebrew, because when I was going through the airport in Tel Aviv and I saw a word and it looked like it said pari. And I was like, well, pari means fruit. So is this like saying, declare any fruits you may have? And the teenage military guard looked at me and kind of chuckled. And she was like, no, it says free. It's the English word free, just spelled with Hebrew. But it was spelled with this, with pay. So that's what threw me. There's also the word in Palestine. Palestine comes from Philistine, and it's spelled with a P, with a pay. So pay in modern Hebrew can have either the P sound or F sound. The next one is tzadeh. So tzadeh kind of looks like I don't know, it always reminds me of like a bonsai tree or something. Tzadeh, and it has a final form as well. If it's at the end of the word, it'll look like this. In Paleo, it looks something like that. And in cursive, it has 2 forms. If it's in the word or begins the word, it'll look like a 3. And if it's at the end of the word, it'll look kind of like a cursive Pe. But tzadeh, this is sometimes you'll see it spelled as a Z. Like if you see those tractor trailer cargo containers on the road, and it'll have something on it that looks like this, and then below it it'll say zim, and that's what this says in Hebrew, tzim, tzim. So sometimes it's spelled with a Z, but it's really a TS sound, like the word bats. If you know Japanese, this is like ts, the letter ts in Japanese, so TS, tzadeh. Next one is kof. This is very similar to kaf. They both make the k sound, but this doesn't have a soft form. This is always kof. So it's either transliterated as a Q, like in Iraq, or sometimes it's transliterated as a K. And in Paleo, it's a little circle with a line that comes down. And then in cursive, this kof drops below the line as well. It's like, it's not a final form, but it's like a final form in that it drops below the line. Kof. Then after kof comes resh. And in Paleo, it almost looks like a 4 or the flag on a green at a golf course. And the cursive is easy. It looks almost exactly like the Aramaic script, but this is resh. Now, resh is a guttural, and sometimes, if especially among Ashkenazi Jews, it'll be pronounced resh, like an R sound, resh. More Mid-Eastern, you'll hear them, they'll pronounce it further back in the throat, resh, resh. So it's like almost a guttural. It's not like a one of those guttural sounds, but it's close. And it behaves in Hebrew at times like a guttural. Just like in English, Y is sometimes a vowel and sometimes a consonant. That's how I think of resh. It's similar to that. So resh or resh, that's just a matter of accent. But it is the R sound. R, R or R. So ayin, pei, tzadeh, kof, resh. And there's only two more letters. It's three, but they're really two, and you'll see why. You have this Hebrew letter, shin, and if it has a dot on the right-hand side, the right way, shin, shin. It makes the SH sound, shin. If it's same letter, but the dot is on this side, on the left-hand side, left in Latin is sinistra, sinister. This is sin, and it's the S sound, same sound as the letter Samic, sin. So it just depends on where the dot's placed. In Paleo, it just kind of looks like a fat W. And in cursive, it looks like a Samic facing down in the other direction. So shin and sin. This is also back in Judges, I think. There's the passage where they were trying to determine who was from where. And they were like, hey, pronounce shibboleth. And if the people they couldn't say the shibboleth, they would say sibboleth. And that's how they knew they weren't from there and they'd kill them. So that's the sin, shin distinction, is these are technically one letter, two different pronunciations. And then the last letter is tau or tav. Again, depending on if you say vav or wow. So it's either tau or tav. In Paleo, it's an X. And this is actually, when it talks about in the Bible putting a mark on the forehead, it's putting a tau on the forehead. And so literally putting an X, putting a mark. In cursive, it looks something like that. Like a little, I don't know, shark fin or a wave or something. Tau is one of the Bagad Kafat letters, and so it can either be pronounced as a hard tau, like t, like tet, or if it's a soft tau, it's th, like in the word thief. In modern Hebrew, I don't think that still holds. I think in modern Hebrew, it's always pronounced like a hard T. But like in Hebrew, if you want to make something plural, if it's a feminine word and you want to pluralize it, like Torah would be singular, Torah. And then if you wanted to say like Torahs, you would say Toroth. But in modern, I think they say Torot. So the oath ending is ot ending in modern Hebrew, to my knowledge. Again, I'm not a modern Hebrew speaker. So the final letters, sin, shin, tau. So that's the Hebrew alphabet. And I prefer learning it in fives. Just that's the way I did it. So I just broke it up 5 at a time. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yod. Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik. Ayin, Pei, Tzadeh, Kof, Resh. Sin, Shin, Tau. And it doesn't work out because there's 22, 23 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. If you separate these two, so the last are just kind of the extras. But to me, it's just an easy way to do it. It's an easy way to get the rhythm in your head just over and over. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yod. Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samik. Ayin, Pei, Tzadeh, Kof, Resh. Sin, Shin, Tau. And I'll show you this before I go. In Cutts and Jossberger's grammar, like I said, they have the alphabet, and then they have the final forms. They list those as well. Then they have the ones that can easily be confused. This is only in Square Script. They don't do this for Aramaic or Paleo. They have the pronunciations. They do follow the modern Hebrew pronunciation. Like they don't distinguish between a tau when it comes to hard and soft. So if you are modern Hebrew, this will be more familiar to you. And then they have how to handwrite Hebrew in Square Script, like how you're actually going to write it, and then how to handwrite it in cursive as well. So that's pretty helpful. One more resource that I'll share, I've shared about it before, is if you want to learn Hebrew but not actually take a Hebrew course, or you just want to know enough Hebrew to know how the language works so you can read commentaries and, get into biblical scholarship, but you're not trying to parse verbs and, memorize vocabulary or anything. Like you're just going to use it with Bible software like Logos or Accordance or Step Bible or something. Hebrew for the Rest of Us by Lee Fields. This is a great introduction. It goes through, shows you how to write the letters. It gives you how they sound. It gets into the vowel points. It shows you how to syllabify. How do you actually read the text? It's got a chapter on text criticism, how the Old Testament was transmitted, how different translations handle different things, why there's so many translations. It talks about how Hebrew verbal roots work. It introduces you to what is that when you hear somebody say, oh, this is from this root or from that root. What does that mean? So it's just a basic grammar that doesn't make you learn like vocabulary and stuff. It just teaches you this is how the language works. So this is a really, really good resource. I very much recommend this. If you're a Disciple Dojo viewer and you want to have some familiarity with Hebrew without, going all in, this would be the resource I recommend. So I don't know if this is helpful or not. I mean, hopefully it is. You can bookmark it and refer back to it if you don't know Hebrew and you want to learn. Again, there are great Hebrew resources out there. Some involve a cost, some are completely free. It just depends on the resource. But if nothing else, at least now you know a little bit about the Hebrew language and you can maybe identify the letters as we're going through the Psalms and looking on the screen. Is this a resh? Is this a dalet? What, like sometimes it makes a difference in text criticism. So hopefully that helps. If you don't have a New Year's resolution for the coming year, why not make it, I want to learn how to read Hebrew. I think that'd be a great New Year's resolution, and that'll help kick off Judaism January with us here at Disciple Dojo as well. So that'll do for now. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, we'd love for you to subscribe if you found this helpful. We'll see you back here next time. As always, keep training.